Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Passion Project, a weekly podcast brought to you by the WHS Tech Crew. I'm one of your hosts, Derek, and I'm joined by Guru.
Hello.
This is a weekly podcast where we bring in a guest so they can talk about something they're particularly passionate about. It can be literally anything. Shot put, doll painting, collecting bowling balls, oil paintings of Kate Beckinsale. This week, our guest is Maryam.
Hi.
Okay. Maryam, what are you here to talk to us about?
I'm here to talk about finding justice in humanitarian causes.
Wow. That's an inspiring cause. A good way to start off 2017.
Yes.
And right before, let's just get a little candid here. How was your New Year's, guys? New Year's, Christmas, winter break?
My New Year's was excellent, Guru. Thank you.
Mine was pretty lonely because I didn't have Derek to celebrate with.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
nice.
but it was still good.
Nice.
So, why don't you tell us more about this cause that you're so passionate about and which is so good for the future of humanity?
Well,
Exciting.
What
It's very
inspired
exciting.
you?
I'm trying to think of the word, guys.
What is the first... Wait, let's go basic. What is a humanitarian cause that you're particularly interested in, sort of like...
I'm very interested right now. Well, always not right now.
Particularly right now.
Particularly right now, the one I'm really focusing on is the Syrian refugee crisis. And also, I'm forgetting the name now, but the Syrian refugee crisis is the main one I'm particularly very into and fighting about. very interesting.
Fighting with who?
With other people who don't believe that it is a thing that should be helped.
Okay.
What are ways that you fight in this way? Do you just argue with people in school, or do
Well,
you argue with people over the internet?
Most of the people that I argue with, their comments are very racist. So I'm actually they're like, oh, but
It's
they're
like fighting. It's like a subset of fighting racism.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, they'd be like, oh, but they're not people. And I'm like, okay, then I could just kill you right now. It wouldn't be a big deal. And he's like, no, but I'm a person. It's like, that's my point.
What
That's
do they
happens.
mean when they say they're not people?
Because they're refugees, and refugees don't have that kind of value as apparently people in America hold, which I don't believe is true. But that's what actually people believe, and I've had people tell me that. So
Like actual high schools and everything.
actual high schoolers in some school, in this school too.
Winchester High School, we'll say it.
Have stated this, and it's pretty disturbing to hear people say that.
And
It's awful.
do you think this is a sort of a cause of just like maybe some things they've sort of picked up when they were kids, just sort of like whatever values they picked up when they were a kid, or just misinformation we get right now on the internet?
I think it's everything, because, well, I wasn't born here, so like my mindset is pretty different in the sense that I have two different cultures I follow. So I follow not everything my culture wants me to. I don't follow everything American culture wants me to. So I think people who are born here only follow American culture, and they don't understand that other cultures, there can be a good, friendly culture clash without it being bad. And a lot of people think that whenever cultures clash, it just turns into a bad thing. And that's what's happening right now.
Okay, and do you think... Okay, Derek. Okay.
Sorry.
And do you think that though at least in my opinion, what I think of this is just like, because of sort of the technology age that we're in right now, I sort of put a lot of these sort of fights and everything on such misinformation in the news and everything. But like, how much of an impact do you think that has on like people these days who get so much, especially kids like us who like, we try to act like we're geniuses and CNN moderators. But how much do you think that sort of like news has impact that news has on us?
I think it has a huge impact because we are on our cell phones. Not all of us, but we're still the population that's always on our phones. So I feel like if we see something that supports what we believe, we read that, but we don't read a supportive argument of that to understand the other perspectives. And a lot of kids will read articles that are very controversial and they don't have a lot of research proven to it. And then they use that in an argument, and it makes no sense because it's not... If you get your information off of Wikipedia and you're like, oh, this person I met quoted it, and then that's a totally different thing because you're connecting it. But if you just go on a random website that has, like, I don't even know, I don't know what a bad website counts as, but if you go on that and read something that supports your view, of course you're not going to believe anything the other person from that other side is saying to you.
in general, do you think the media does a good job of finding justice, or does it
No.
encourage people? Okay.
No,
Why do you
I
think
think the media creates a lot more problems than actually solving it.
I agree.
But I think that opens up a larger discussion to be had about how the media nowadays has such a different effect on like such humanitarian causes than it did like decades ago. Because if you look at how the media, like for example, the Watergate case, the media was so influential in bringing to light that scandal. But then you have right now they're doing it's so muddled because it's all about clickbait and it's all about like we're just gonna put these random headlines. It's not even just like political news. You'll find it in like entertainment news and like science news. Like it's everywhere. But it's just about sort of like pushing an agenda, pushing their own agenda to like get themselves popular and like get people like clicking on something, even if it's not exactly true. And it's such a rapidly different process of how people collect news, because before there'd be such extensive processes of like we find a little tidbit, then we're gonna vet it again and again and again, and once we know it's 100% or at least almost 100% fact, we'll throw it out there. And now it's like rumor, put it online, put it out there. And so I think that does open up what are your thoughts on like that, how sort of the purpose of the media has changed and sort of their their impact of like humanitarian causes?
Well, the media when I think of a media that I would want is one that tells the truth and doesn't make up like lies. Because if you make up a lie about, for example, one country, then you're affecting that country and you're creating a stereotype of that country as well. And that just leads to many other problems. So the media that I hope in the future we have is a media that like doesn't make up lies to build off success off of it. And I think that's a totally wrong thing to do. And in humanitarian causes, that's exactly what they're doing, because they're like, oh, like these many people died, and it makes like the front page for like one day, and then they don't mention it until a next like a even worse thing than before has happened, and then they bring it up again. So it's not even like consecutive, like, oh, like in Aleppo, for example, like it was never brought up until the entire city was blown up. So I just don't think they do a good job of tracking it as it goes, and they just kind of only bring it up when they know it's going to bring them a lot of views.
I think too a big issue is not even just lies, but also when they tell the truth, but they only tell like one very small part of the truth, and like either people only read the headline, or even in the article itself they won't. It's not like quote unquote the whole truth. And then there's a whole issue too, like Guru said, sometimes a news source, like instead of vetting something, will literally just put it on. So then another news source will say, well, this news source says it's true, so it's true. And then another one goes to that one and says this is true. And I think, like you said, it's changed from like we're actually going to report what's happening and like blank like spot or about this issue. It's just like, oh, people will freak out if they find out that people are getting blown up somewhere.
And also, what are your thoughts about how, like, because, like, this past year, like, 2016, there were several, like, major, like, terrorist attacks, whether it be in, like, France or even here, like, Orlando. But then there was also an issue, like, I saw this pop up in some people's, like, social media feeds about how, like, you have these really tragic events happening, and then you have these other events, I think, wasn't there, like, around the time of, like, Orlando... The Orlando shooting. Yeah, there was like a bombing in Bangladesh and like all these things, but that was just completely ignored because you had this whole controversy out Orlando, and then even that was like blown up into like, was it like a gay crime? Was it like a Islamic crime? Like all these different things. And so like, why do you think do you think the media like ignores all these particular events, and like would it be better, like how do you think they could focus on them more, like what impact do you think would it bring if they did focus on like everything else more?
Well, I know one of the ones that you mentioned were Orlando, I forget the other ones.
France?
Yeah, France, there we go. Orlando and France. And the thing with that, which I've noticed when I read a lot of them, is if something happens in Europe, it's just blown up. And in Bangladesh, for example, a large number of people died, and it was never brought up. Like very few people knew about it. There was also a bombing, or I think it was a fire. I forget what it specifically was. It was something of an explosion in Saudi Arabia, right near like the mosque, and it was during the pilgrimage. So a lot of people were injured, and no one knew about it. So I think it's the stereotypes that kind of prevent people, because people associate terrorists with Muslims, and Muslims live in Saudi Arabia and Bangladesh, so they don't care as much, because a lot of people think, oh, they deserve it because they're terrorists. But then some people who are living there are actually not that way at all, and they actually agree with us, and they want to get rid of all those terrorist groups, but they don't see that because the media portrays that country as a terrorist group. So if they actually brought that in and mentioned that, oh, this is happening in other countries, I think people would understand and actually get rid of those stereotypes, and it would just lower a lot of, I think it would just lower a lot of racial prejudice, and it would actually get people to start having a conversation without being really oblivious to the situation.
I also think that, like Guru said, the media is becoming more about clickbait. And you'll have times where if something big is happening in the US or Europe, they like just cover that. And they only really cover international things, especially things about, like, I hate to say it, but countries that the US like doesn't care about, when there's no other news. So instead of putting out another headline about like they spotted Tom Hanks at the beach, then they can look at the international news and go, oh, well, this country that we've never heard of before, something happened there, so we can put that in. But when they don't need it, they just don't care.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I think especially because, like, I mean, if you look at something like, I mean, I was also born in a different country. I was born in India, and then I came here in 2003. And then, like, so many big things have happened in India recently, some of which may not guarantee, like, worldwide news. Like, there was a prime minister in a state that, not prime minister, sorry, a chief minister in a state that, like, died recently. But, like, the only thing that, or, like, last year, 2 years ago, there was this, like, massive heat wave that actually killed hundreds of people. These really, like, big issues, but, like, the only thing that people were talking about as of late was, like, the whole demonetization thing. And even then, it was, like, reported on for, like, a day or something like that. And then, do you think, at least particularly with this past year, with the whole, like, election thing, not to get into, like, the results or anything, but just the fact that, like, because that was going on, it had an effect on, like, a higher presence of, like, real humanitarian news, because everyone was just focusing on, like, covering that instead?
I think this past year was pretty bad media coverage in all the years that I've been reading and acting on this passion. I think last year was the worst year for media, because everywhere I went, Trump was on every single headline, which is not. I just don't think that Trump is that important if you compare it to other humanitarian causes, because if you compare one person to like a million, there's no comparison, because it's a million people versus one, and they all have different stories. Those million people could be suffering, and they could have a totally different view of the world, and then we have certain presidential elects who have a completely opposite view. So I think that created a very mix and kind of a separation, because then a lot of the media companies were even being separated, and certain were supporting one president-elect while the others were actually supporting the other president-elect, and you could see the separation between how they responded to those humanitarian issues, like, very clearly.
Mm-hmm. And I know some people who are listening, they're definitely going to be bringing it up, like, it makes sense for there to be so much coverage, because it's like you're picking the next leader of the whole country. But at the same time, I think it's something like you said. Oh, do you not agree, or?
Wait, what? Sorry.
No, I thought you made a face. I thought you didn't agree.
I don't agree with covering. Like, it's fine to have a leader of a country, like, go for it, but, like, I don't think it should be like on every single news channel, like, 24/7. I think that's kind of extreme.
Okay. But I just know someone's gonna bring it up, and we do recognize that. Like, why people find it to be, like, more important than other things. But, like, I agree. No, I agree. I do also understand your point of just, like, there could be more coverage. There could be more attention towards these other issues, especially as we brought up, like, Aleppo, which, like, after that sort of actually came to light, so many people were, like, posting on Facebook, what is Aleppo? And it just comes to light of just, like, how much it was. I think that in particular, amongst, like, other issues, was particularly, like, ignored, or at least there wasn't enough coverage on the Syrian refugee crisis. Like,
we could have, or not we, I meant, like, the other people, the medias could have easily covered that while they were covering Trump, and I think it would have brought a lot more attention. We could have possibly done something to help them, or like as a country like figured out a way. And I think because of the past years media coverage of a certain person, that wasn't possible.
Honestly, it's like with both of them because
no,
like,
it's both of them.
It's both of them because like I mean, not to like sway towards
it's the
one
entire
way,
event.
not to sway toward one way or the other, but like you can tell the media didn't care about because how much talk was there about policy during this past election? It was like
it was just
none. It was
it
personal
was literally
jabs.
just talk about like Donald Trump's past scandals or Hillary's past scandals, and it's
I think the issue is mainly the media finding the balance between, yes, it's very important who is taking over this country, but it, like Maryam said, it does not need to be the only thing on the news 24/7. And the thing that sucks too is a lot of media isn't half about the presidential, like the debates or the candidates, and then half about humanitarian things. It's like half about that. Well, 70% about that, 20% about like entertainment, and then 5% on like local news, like dog saves a man from fire, and then 5% about humanitarian causes.
It's like the little small snippet right before the break, like, oh, we'll talk about Aleppo when it's coming back from the break, and they just mention like two sentences, like, oh, these people died. This is what President Trump has to say, or like Hillary Clinton has to say about the events, and it's kind of like, what are they gonna do? Like, they're not elected yet, so they can't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Do you have? I mean, maybe let's bring it local. And like in Winchester, how do you think this town sort of like deals with like humanitarian causes? Because there are so many like sort of fundraisers, or, like different events you could go to. There's JSA and like other debate clubs. There are community service clubs. How do you think it's, in your experiences in living in Winchester, how do you think it sort of like is in this town?
I think Winchester specifically does do a good job fundraising stuff. Like, I know we do, not for like humanitarian stuff, but like we do collect books for like some third world countries who don't have a lot of books and they can't afford books. So like I do think that like from the high school perspective and as a student who participates in those events and living in this town obviously, that Winchester does do a good job of like helping. But I just think it's like a side thing, like, oh, we'll just give these books away, but they don't actually realize like even like that one or two books that they're donating, I think they just like, I think we take things for granted. So when we have a book and we're like, we don't want it, we just give it to someone, we don't realize that some kids don't even have a single book or they haven't read a single book. So I do think that we're doing a really good job with it, but I think like we could still do a bit better and actually like help out on a bigger scale.
What are some ways or some events, whether it's fundraising or donating or something else, that you think like specifically, not specifically Winchester, but what are specific things do you think like small towns in general can do
to make a difference?
Yeah.
Well, I think this is just me talking. I'm just saying.
It's your passion. So.
It's my passion. Yeah. That was really far from the mic. Anyway, I think that we live in Massachusetts, as you guys, whatever. We're home to like one of the best hospitals in the entire country almost, and even the world, I think. So we could but we could possibly donate medical supplies to certain countries that don't have medical supplies, or we could donate to the Red Cross who actually go out and help those countries. We can donate blood, because any O positives out there, your blood is like acceptable. So I'm just saying O positives or O's in general are
acceptable.
No, like they can give blood to anyone. So like if you're an O positive, you should definitely, or O negative, whatever, you can donate blood. You can do like even like the smallest things. Like you don't think that donating blood would like help someone, but like if you just donate a pint, it could actually save someone's life. So
true, but a lot of blood is thrown out early, and it's not very common to send like large amounts of blood from here to another country in certain cases.
But some of it does. Just because it doesn't get there doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. There's still some.
No, I'm not saying, everyone should just stop giving up blood because it's useless. All right,
like, you should
guys,
still do it.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's a small amount, you should still give.
True.
I think.
Okay. And
anything else?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think.
Yeah, we should, actually.
Let's just ignore all our problems. No, don't do that, guys. Make a difference. But I think.
We're making cookies to send to them.
Oh, I thought you just meant you were going to make cookies just for kicks.
No. Have you guys heard of organic doomsday buckets?
What?
They're like, okay, you know how people are like doomsday preppers?
Yeah.
They're like buckets, but of like all organic food. It's literally just like bags of beans and rice and stuff, and I think we could send those to another country.
Yeah, we could send
That'd
those.
be cool. I had like my dad and I had the most awkward confrontation with like one of those doomsday guys. We were like outside of Market Basket and we were like putting our stuff back into our groceries back into the car, and then this guy walks up to us and he like forces a flyer into my dad's hand, and he just like, it was so awkward, and he took it just cause to get him away. And then like the moment we got into the car, he just rips it up. And it was like, but I think to maybe do a throwback to one of our previous episodes with Katrina, who talked about like community service, and like I think one of the things that were brought up was like some people, as you were saying, like people take it for granted of like what sort of position. I mean, let's be honest, this is a pretty well off town, like extremely well off, very rich. But the thing is like some kids sort of like they expect a reward for something they do, or they sort of they just don't understand like the point of like doing these things or like caring about such humanitarian causes. And like for you, like what sort of gives you the like quote unquote benefits of just sort of like pursuing these interests, pursuing like learning more about these causes and like trying to like fight them, so
I really don't know how to answer that question.
It is like, why are you so interested in, I guess, basically.
Yeah, that was a very
Well,
long. I kind of lost track of the question.
End of 2015, so about 2 years ago, there was an attack in Peshawar, Pakistan, which was in a school, and 300-ish kids died. And one of those kids was actually family who died in the thing. So then that's when I actually got really into it, because no one covered it, and it was like 300 like little kids who died. And then like I actually read into the situation, and I was talking, I don't know what happened, but like this certain things happened that week, and this one kid talked to me about the issue, about that event, and he said some things that I was really against him saying, but I still like researched it because I want to see if like what he said was actually true. And so I actually researched the entire event, researched everything from like back to like the night. Apparently it was going on since the 90s. I don't know, that conflict. And I read into it and I found out everything he had said was a lie. So then I got really into it. I was like, oh wow, like a lot of people who make arguments, like they don't know their stuff. So then that's when like I got into that. That was like my first real passion, like my first real like thing I got into, my first event. And then I kept going, and then right around that time, the Syria thing just erupted, and then I got into that, and just kind of bumped everywhere after that. It was
What? I mean, you say you research. What is your definition of researching? Do you go on like a lot of different major news sites, or do you have like one source you go to, or do you go to like a lot of smaller news sites too?
I
Do you read books?
Well, no, because there aren't books about certain events
With
right now.
new things, it's
yeah,
like
but
it is
past
weird,
events,
though.
like I haven't read into past events because I don't know why I haven't. I should read into past events now, I think. But I mostly read articles, and at that time, I started off with CNN because CNN it's good to like find information from, and then I would just keep going onto every other media channel and see if they had similarities, and then I would see the facts or sources that they stated were true. And then since I also know a little bit of Urdu, I read some Urdu articles as well, and that's how I got most of my information. It was pretty interesting.
I think that's a lot better than just like popping up Twitter or Facebook and just being like reading the headline.
Or someone retweets an article and it's just the title of the article, and then they base like a whole argument off that.
Yeah.
You
Like the
gotta
Facebook
understand.
arguments. We talked about this like
On Charlotte's episode.
on Charlotte's
too.
throwback to our second episode, which was really fun. But like that still annoys me because it still happens and it's gonna keep happening. It'll probably get worse. These 3 a.m. like Facebook like just arguments that people just have paragraphs and paragraphs.
Or not even that. I think the most annoying thing about social media is when something happens in France, like the thing that happened in France and then happened in Orlando, and everyone changed their profile picture with that filter. I was really mad. Like, yo, you should support it, but like no one did that for any other like lower
Yeah.
Eastern countries. So I
roll
like
that out every time
I don't like.
something
I'm
happens.
kind of. I don't like that. Whenever that comes up, I get really mad, but then I forget about it because they're suffering, so I just let it go.
Also on Facebook, the issue of, remember, you talked about the kid who argued with you about something, and apparently everything he said was a lie. there's people who will get into arguments, and one person they don't know it, but they're basing their argument off of lies, and then the other person will just take their entire argument, and they don't know they're basing it off of lies, and then you get into, like, arguments where someone will be very, very, like, set in their conviction that blank is true, and it's
But
not.
it's just so hostile, and it, like, that's something that just, it's just, like, it's childish, and it's just something that I think prevents a lot of people from just sort of, like, coming together, and, like, because if you want to, like, focus on these humanitarian issues, like, a lot of the first steps of just, like, bringing about change is for people to just, like, basically, like, get on the same page and, like, work together, which basically just doesn't happen a lot anymore.
It's because of stereotypes. That
Continue.
Oh, what?
Continue on that.
Oh.
I think that's a very good point, yeah.
Well, I kind of mentioned it before, but, like, certain cultures have a reputation of either being, like, there's a lot. The only thing that comes into my mind is Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and India, because a lot of people are Indians. Like, it's kind of mean. Like, a lot of people don't like Indian men specifically, because India has such a rape percentage that they just don't like them. And it's not, I'm not saying, like, all guys are, like, small portion, but they based off all respect for other people off that small portion. Same thing with ISIS and everyone. Like, that's a small portion of many different cultures. You can't base off, like, 100,000 people on, like, a billion population. Like, that's just not something you should ever do. And that, since that's what's being covered by the news, and they keep saying, like, oh, it's such a big issue, they don't realize it's actually a very small minority of those people representing a culture, and they're just getting a whole misunderstanding of it.
Exactly. And you know what? There's going to be some person who's probably going to say about how we're, like, criticizing the news and stuff, and they'll be like, oh, there's just one channel or these two channels that do it. And it's very different from what we were talking about. It's very different from, like, what you're talking about, the whole generalizing, stereotyping thing, because you have, like, a small percentage, and then people just take it way to an extreme. Whereas we're talking about, like we're talking about, like, almost all, like, major news sites doing, like, not really doing this. So that's just a small disclaimer.
Yeah, but I think it's very common with just about anything, like taking an entire group. Like, it happened back when, like, feminism started being a thing. They would take, like, the very, very radical feminists who were like, we need to make men our slaves and, like, overturn all governments everywhere. And they're like, this is how feminists think. And, like, they do it a lot. Like, people talk about it with certain religions, and they forget that, like, certain major religions nowadays, like, even nowadays, like, a lot in the past and still today, like, people talk about the Westboro Baptist Church, but they're not, like quote-unquote all Christians. But I think it's just very common in general to take, with any group, the most radical people are the most outspoken, so they'll only report on that, and then you will get the, as you said, the entire image of all the people from, like, the small extreme minority.
Is that another, sorry, feminism, as you mentioned, is that another humanitarian cause here?
I can, if we talk about feminism, I'll go on for 2 hours. Like, just don't even get me started.
Well, we have more time, so I would just give your general thoughts about, like, that topic. Yeah, another humanitarian cause. That topic.
Oh, there's so much on that.
Feminism.
Topic. It really depends on the region, because in the U.S., feminism is different. Or, like, feminists have a different
Northeast,
idea.
just for the
Northeast,
people, listening,
here,
that's what they'll relate to the most.
In Massachusetts right now, there's the pay gap. That's a huge issue, and apparently the UNO has, I say apparently because I don't think it's going to be enforced that much, that they are going to aim to make 2017 equal pay, and I was really excited because I read an article about it. I couldn't find any other articles about it, so I'm not positive that that's going to happen. So that's the issue here. But other than that, there's a lot of issues that need to be fixed in feminism, and
such as,
let's see, abuse, abortion, child marriage. There's some in the U.S. I was kind of surprised. There's quite a large number in the U.S. as well.
Child marriages?
Yeah. I was really surprised when I was like, it can't be in the U.S.
I think there's still a lot of states that are like, if you're 14, you can get married if your parents consent. It's just that.
Oh, I think Texas is one of those states.
Most people,
Like,
don't.
I thought there was gonna be, like, some number. I forget the number, but it was quite a large thing. I was kind of surprised.
Oh my god. Sorry, no.
No. Go on.
No, I just realized if you look to the 2014 Abomination, Transformers 4, whatever it's called, there's a point to this because like there's one particular scene. I don't know why I watched that movie. It's so bad. It's such a garbage film. But there's one particular scene where like Mark Wahlberg is just mad that his daughter is like dating like a guy, a slightly older guy. He's like I guess like 20 something, and she's like a high school teenager. And then the movie actually takes the time to whip out like a statuette and just be like, no, it's actually legal for her to be underage and still be dating me.
Like, why?
Oh, well, I mean, I think I know what he's talking about, but like, that's very weird to put in it. You said it was Transformers.
Yes, I know, right? And it's Michael Bay, but like.
Okay, that's yeah.
No, but I'm just saying, like, it's like, it's true. It happens, and apparently they wanted to put it in a movie too, but
Transformers on top of that.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
It's weird too because it's a lot of times the age in certain states the age of consent is below 18, and I'm pretty sure this is wrong or it's been changed since then, but at some point in time Hawaii's age of consent was 13. And it's like, what's so different from the kids in Hawaii versus like Massachusetts?
What are your thoughts on the dialogue surrounding rape culture? But I think that's a very something that was very topical this past year, especially because like there were so many big cases, such as there was that one college student who yeah.
Oh.
What?
No, he was from Stanford.
Oh.
Yeah, the Stanford kid who like he got off with just a few months, and that actually had a lot to do, I guess, with race. Or also we had the Birth of a Nation. The star / director of that movie, Nate Parker, was like he was someone who was acquitted of rape charges like years ago, but like because of like him and his friend like just college scandal. But then like it was like a college scandal, and like
it's okay. I've never heard of this before.
No,
yeah, me
dude.
neither.
Oh really?
No.
It was a huge thing this past year.
Yeah, but you're also really into movies.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fine. Just, anyone can just look it up. Look up The Birth of a Nation 2016. Nate Parker, who is the co-writer, director, actor of the movie, and like he was basically he's African American. He was acquitted of rape charges like a few years ago, and then just recently, because he's gotten so much publicity for this movie, and also it's a movie about like the Nat Turner revolt, and there's actually a rape scene in the film. And there was so much coverage about this guy, Nate Parker, like the actual person, because of what he had done in the past, and he was getting a lot of scrutinization for it. And also, like in the press, he would not publicly apologize for what he had done because he personally believed he didn't do anything wrong, which is like a totally another debate. But basically, my point is that the rape culture has been something that's been really like at peak topic this whole year. So, I mean, like, what are your thoughts on, like, the dialogue surrounding that? Because I know it can get really harsh or sort of inconsiderate at times.
Are you saying in just movies or?
No. I mean, just in general. I mean,
in general?
that was, like, a case about an actor, and then you had the Stanford kid. So I think I'm just saying it was pretty.
Well, like, I know certain songs as well have some lyrics that are pretty. Whatever. They are pretty, like, out there. And I think since. Like, everyone listens to music. I know, like, teenagers especially, so, like, 13 or even younger kids listen to stuff. So if it's not, like, a curse word or if it's not, like, a word that's very profound, they don't, like, clean it. It's not, like, in the clean version. So when kids hear that and then they're saying it, they're like, oh, like, I can do that, like, whatever. And it just creates a whole thing because then their argument would be, oh, but the song said this and the song is backed up by the singer, the songwriter, and the company.
And the famous people who they see in the news.
Yeah, and obviously they're going to believe the people in the news but I just think there's certain things, especially with I think songs are like the biggest in movies, I think, are like the biggest things that contribute to that because they don't realize that they have a younger audience that are kind of developing their personality and kind of like knowing the world, and then they hear stuff like this and they believe it and they're like, oh, I can do that because this song backs me up, and it's a cool song for me to like do certain stuff, and it's possible. It actually happens.
And I definitely think that like you said, just like even the small messages that repeat themselves in movies and songs, in the media, especially to younger kids, like solely ingrains itself in their mind, and that's where you get the like rape culture. It's not like someone sat someone down once and was like, hey, you know that law that says it's legal to rape someone? That's not true. Like,
Yeah,
that
it's
never
just through a
happened.
song. Yeah.
But there's, like you say, all these songs and sometimes movies that almost glorify it or like act like they say things that imply like not want, like if someone doesn't want it or whatever, like it's okay. I don't know.
Yeah, like
There's a lot of
certain
things.
this. I think you've all heard of like, oh, she was asking for it. Like it's a very common thing for people to say that, and it's just I don't think it's
No, it's like she was asking for it, or like
know,
they could have
because-
avoided it, or it's like oh god, I was just reading this other case about like some judge who had like completely disregarded like another rape case just because. And the thing is, like, they always turn out to put the blame on the victim,
yeah.
which makes like no sense to
Like,
me.
oh, she shouldn't have been dressing that way. And
She shouldn't have been
she's-
walking alone
you know,
at 2 a.m.
It
You
was
know.
it was a pretty
So
dumb
safe.
idea to go to that bar. Like everyone knows that bar's in a bad part of town or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah, no, but like, what are your thoughts about like that? About that? I guess that's going deeper into like just sort of rape culture, but also like that topic of the talk of consent, and how more often than not, like you see like the victim gets sort of sort of criticized as opposed to like the actual criminal.
Well, I've noticed. Again, this is just me noticing. That if you compare, for example, like if a guy gets drunk, then it's like, oh, okay, a guy got drunk. But then if a girl's drunk and she gets raped, for example, then they would say, why was she drinking? Why was she at that bar? Why wasn't she careful about why wasn't she watching her drink? Why was she doing this? And meanwhile, if a guy does the exact same thing, he doesn't get questioned for his actions, and just goes back to hierarchy and how even now in 2017, not the year, it's the exact same thing. They just value men a lot more. I don't know why, because it doesn't make sense to value them anymore. I think we should be treated as equals. But in rape culture, that's exactly what happens with the Stanford guy. Like, he raped the girl. This pisses me off. Like, he raped her and he just got away with an offense, a few months in jail, and then he was just going to be in his state known as a sex offender. And that's something, if you rape someone without their consent, they didn't give you permission, they weren't interested in you, they basically
it
took
was
you to
a
court.
violent-
It was
Yeah.
violent. She like had no memory of it. Like, how do you think that's okay to do without the person? It's like someone coming up to you and like hitting you in the back and running away, and then their argument would be, oh, but you were walking on the street. Like, it's pretty dangerous. You're surrounded by cars, but it's like, yeah, but I was walking on the sidewalk. It's kind of like that mentality. Like, you're safe, but like you can't just come up to me and punch me and just run away because I'm on the sidewalk and it's already unsafe.
Yeah.
Like, it's a pretty bad.
Sort of the double standards and stereotypes that really affect
Yeah.
that skew people's judgment.
Like, it's dangerous to use a pen, guys. You know, you could stab yourself easily.
Yeah.
So it's
And I think like
equal.
just not even just gender and all these things, and then also if you take into account like race, because I mean like the Stanford kid, he was also a white guy. Let's be upfront about that. And then you have someone like Nate Parker, who like I do encourage people to like read up on this, because it was actually like so many big things, big revelations. Where like I also forgot to mention that with Nate Parker, it was also revealed that like the girl in that case, the victim, she had actually committed suicide as well, like a few years ago, just because of all the stress that had built up over like a decade and a half or something. And then you still had this guy who, granted, acquitted of charges, whatever, but he would never publicly apologize for it. He was just sort of embroiled in all this conflict and everything. And then now his career is like just thrashed just because of that. And he also happens to be an African American guy. But it does beg the question: if he was a white actor and he was in this big, sort of a Civil War production, but it was the exact same case, would the media's reaction to him be as harsh?
the question is, would the media even bring it up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's so many cases of, like, someone is like, oh my gosh, this person did something. And they're like, oh yeah, like, either you didn't know or, oh, that's weird. Like, I've never heard of that. Because if he were, like, in my personal opinion, if he were white and someone in the media looked back on that, they would go, that's not a big deal. And look for something else more outrageous to, like, try and hurt his reputation with.
Actually, we can go. There's another big Oscar contender right now, Manchester by the Sea, and the lead actor in that, Casey Affleck. He has actually had like some like sort of sexual harassment allegations brought up against him, which has never been brought up once in this whole like sort of Oscar media thing. And then you talk about the thing about let's get something worse and then pin it on that guy. So you have just sexual harassment, which is still a very serious thing, and then you have like this big rape case that was done a long time ago, but now they've sort of enlarged it again. And so, what are your thoughts though on like? I mean, we talked about like how gender and all these other things sort of come into play, but then race is just another big issue that sort of affects that.
Race is a whole new.
Yeah, that's
It's
really
a really
deep,
deep and very
I mean, just give your basic thoughts on it.
for the U.S.
for the U.S.
For the U.S.
Well, I think that race plays a huge part in everything in the U.S. I honestly do, as a person of color, not specifically African American, but I'm still a person of color. If you guys didn't know, I don't know why I just said that.
Well, I mean,
but,
it's a podcast, so.
Yeah, but as a person of color and as as a woman, I don't know why I took a pause there. Like it does. Gender doesn't. I think gender does play a part, but I think race plays a bigger part in a lot of things. So like a lot of parents, they're more strict towards the daughter, and if you look at how they treat their son, it's totally different. But versus if you see in a job or like in a workplace, the people who are kind of different ethnicities are treated completely different. And even on the street,
like it happens in school even.
Yeah, in school, on the street, like it's very common where you'll just see like I've seen this happen. Like there'll be a white guy and like an African American guy walking together, and people would like stare at the white guy because he's walking with a person who's not like him, and that's apparently it's weird to have friends that are of different color, and I didn't know that. I don't believe that either, but people are actually against that, and it's kind of scary to see that because then if you say that to a bunch of adults, then if kids who are playing together, are you going to separate them just because they're different? Because that just brings it back to sex segregation. So it's kind of still like a civil rights thing, which has only been like what 40, 50, maybe 60 years since that got passed. So I still think like we do have a lot of work in the U.S. to do because it does play a huge part, and not in a good part. I think we have a lot of work to do in the race part.
And I definitely think it also, I mean, like you said, it comes on the, like, basic social level of, like, seeing someone on the street. But it has an effect on, like, legal systems and such. Like, every time, when people were getting angry about, like, Brock Turner, like, getting off easy, which he, we're not even going to go into that, he totally did. People would then post images of somebody else who, they would have, like, a picture of a girl and be like, this girl was raped by a black guy. No one's talking about her case, and no one's talking about it because he got jail time. He got the time for the crime. And, like, I'm not gonna go into how maybe, like, how people in the legal system might also discriminate against black people, but, like, nobody was going, even if that black kid was an athlete, they're not gonna be like, oh, well, he has his future ahead of him. You know, they treat the case totally differently. And I mean, this is your passion, so
it's proven. Well, there's actually a thing. I think it's if you're a drug dealer and you get caught. I think it's,
you get way more time. Any sexual crime is like
it depends on the drug, and I think
drugs.
If you have a certain amount or like that specific kind of drug, you can get like federal prison. If you get raped, I think it's only up to like 2 or 3 years.
Or the fact that someone can spend more time in jail for carrying around
drugs.
like a small personal amount of marijuana, which like I'm not gonna go into my opinion on drugs, but like if someone is carrying around a joint, the fact that person like this isn't true for every state, but there have been cases where someone has been with a very very small amount of like a not hard drug and has spent
more time
10
in jail
years or more in jail, and then someone can literally violently rape another person and get 3 months, but.
Not fair, guys.
No, not fair at all.
Well, not guys. I just meant the world, not you guys.
No, that's what I was agreeing with you.
Okay.
The world is not fair.
No.
But, you know, there are things we can do to better it.
And the whole point of finding justice is that we don't say the world's bad and then we give up.
Yeah. Even though, I mean, like, even the whole thing, I mean, we were criticizing the law and everything, but, like, that also is, like, just a double-edged sword of like there's a lot of good and a lot of bad. Just
the world has been improving in general, I think.
Yeah.
For the past.
I think we have a huge way to go.
We still have a huge way to go, of course. But I still think like it's not like you can say.
It's still like we did some good stuff.
We're still getting better.
But
actually, did you know? Okay, I think the statistic is BS just because it seems incredibly high, but I wouldn't doubt that there's some truth behind it. I read this. this website claimed that in 2016, 93% of the world's population was literate. And
No.
I want to believe that's true, but 93 sounds really, really, really
No.
high.
That is
I feel
really
like
high.
even if they said it went from like 40% to like 60% or something, I would have been like, that's insane. That's 20%, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think it's 93. But I think what they meant was it's improved a lot, which is good. And like sometimes we just forget that there's still like those changes are still happening in other countries.
There's a lot of improvement, and I think internationally there's a lot of great things happening. A lot of countries are sort of like coming away from like long gone traditions and just sort of breaking away from stereotypes, including America. But then, as like you said, there's a lot of work that can still be done. And then like my only fear is that like there's all these good things happening, and then you have, like in my opinion, we have a country that's sort of like pretty, what's the word, fractured, I guess you could say.
Oh, the U.S. is going downhill.
Yeah, I mean it's just
my personal opinion.
and it's
not to do with this specific election, but I mean
no,
like,
take the election out of there. Just it's like my main thing with social media. And like we're talking about the Facebook fights, we're talking about people pushing their agenda, we're talking about people just not being on the same page. It's such a weird thing of like people have the ability to communicate more, and they do, and it's just to argue. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just like there's such a lack of communication, of like collaboration, because it's just not about like helping the country. It's just about helping ourselves. And like I was talking to my dad the other day about like India, and like about India, and then like he was even talking about like how, I mean, like he had to, like he's been in India like almost all his life, so like he knows a lot about, and that's even a more sort of corrupt politically country than America. But then he was saying like, I don't hate India, like I don't hate the country India, I just hate the people in it. And like that said something about like this country too. Like, America, great or not, like you can say whatever you want, but like it's just the people in it that could make it what it can be.
And I think a big thing too is like, personally, I love America, and I think that the idea of America is great, but I criticize it a lot, not because I hate America, but because I know that what America should be is, America is supposed to be great, and that is much, I'm not saying,
America is great, it's just the people.
The thing is, I think the reason I'm frustrated with America and that I dislike and criticize all things going on is because I know we can be doing so much better than this. And just because I disagree maybe with like current like laws or whatever is going on and social opinions, it's because I want America to be better than that. And I don't know if America was, the pinnacle of everything at some point.
But the key word you said right there was we. We make it great. Not America make itself great. We make it great. I think that's something very important. It's like it's about us sort of coming together, fighting humanitarian causes.
Fighting
them, yes.
Fighting them. Fighting for them. Fighting for.
It's like the firefighters thing.
You're fighting injustice for humanitarian causes.
Mm-hmm.
My apologies. Yes, I see it.
All right, Maryam, do you have any... Well, Guru, first, do you have any questions? Because you always seem to have more questions than me.
No, today's a lot more just sort of going. I mean, like, unless there are other, because like there are so many.
Yes, Maryam, do you have any last thoughts or even a new concept you'd like to introduce at this point?
Just like something last that maybe, again, this is another time to just bring up something that hasn't been talked about enough in the whole scheme of the world.
That's a pretty heavy burden.
That's a very heavy.
Maryam, is there anything else you'd like to say on this podcast at this moment in time?
No, I think I said it all. I really do. I think we should all try to do better.
You said everything.
And
you used all the
try
words.
to help others and not take stuff for granted. What?
Okay, that's great. Well, guys, this has been a very, very fun.
It was a great episode.
Yeah, thoughtful. That's the better word. It's been a very fun and thoughtful episode. We got to talk about several issues, and so please subscribe to us on YouTube. This has been another great episode. Thank you so much, Maryam, for coming in to talk with us today.
Thanks for coming. Okay, no. I shouldn't.
Again, we have all our other episodes on YouTube, so please subscribe to us there, and definitely catch up. There's a lot of great other great guests we've had, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.